The rain was pouring like the sky had finally given up. A billionaire sat helpless inside a broken car on an empty highway, his phone dead, his confidence shattered. Then, through the rain and mud, a woman in a dusty construction uniform walked toward him, and in that moment, money meant nothing. The rain had no mercy that night. It fell heavy and cold, drenching the deserted highway until the road shimmered like broken glass under the dim glow of streetlights. The black luxury car stood still on the side of the road, its hazard lights blinking weakly, like a silent cry for help. Inside the car sat Adrian Cole, a man whose name ruled boardrooms, whose signature moved millions, whose life was protected by layers of power, wealth, and control. Yet that night, none of it mattered. The engine had died, without warning. His phone battery had drained hours ago after a long day of meetings. The driver he had sent home earlier was miles away, and the rain had erased every sense of direction. Adrian leaned back in his seat and let out a slow breath. For the first time in years, there was no assistant to call, no problem that could be solved with money. Just darkness, rain, and silence. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, rubbing his temples. He stepped out of the car, his expensive shoes sinking slightly into the wet mud. The cold rain soaked through his tailored coat within seconds. He looked around, hoping to see headlights, a building, anything. But the highway stretched endlessly in both directions, empty and unforgiving. That's when he noticed the sound. Not the rain. The steady rhythm of metal striking stone. He turned his head toward the source and squinted through the rain. About 50 meters away, under a half-built flyover, a small group of workers were still there despite the storm. Yellow helmets, reflective vests dulled by mud. And one woman stood out among them. She was lifting heavy cement blocks, her movements slow but determined. Her clothes were soaked, her hair tied tightly under her helmet, her face streaked with rain and dust. While others took shelter, she kept working, as if stopping was not an option. Adrian hesitated. He had never asked for help like this before.
His world didn't work that way. People came to him.
Problems bowed to him. But tonight, he was just a man with a broken car. He walked toward the construction site, rain drumming against his shoulders. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice almost lost in the storm. The woman turned. Her eyes met his, sharp and alert, not surprised, not afraid, just curious. She quickly placed the cement block down and walked closer. "Yes?" she asked, her voice calm, strong and steady. "My car broke down," Adrian said, gesturing back toward the highway. "I was wondering if you could help me call someone. My phone is dead." She studied him for a moment.
His accent was polished.
His clothes were expensive, though now ruined by rain. Still, there was something tired and vulnerable in his eyes that money couldn't hide. "Phone won't work here," she said honestly. "Signal's weak." His heart sank. "But," she added, "there's a generator in the site office. You can charge your phone. And we might check your car too." Relief washed over him. "Thank you. I'm Adrian." She nodded slightly. "I'm Maya." She led him toward a small temporary shelter made of metal sheets and wood. The ground was muddy, but she walked with ease, while he struggled to keep his balance. She noticed and slowed her pace without saying anything. Inside the shelter, she handed him a dry cloth. "Wipe your face. You'll catch a cold." He hesitated.
No one spoke to him like that.
Not orders. Not concern. Just simple human care. "Thank you," he said softly. She plugged a cable into the generator and handed it to him. "Charge it. It'll take a few minutes." As he waited, he watched her move around the site. She gave instructions to the workers, checked safety ropes, adjusted a loose plank. They listened to her. respected her. "You're in charge here?" he asked. She shrugged. "Someone has to be." He smiled faintly. "In this rain?" She looked at him, a small smile touching her lips. "Work doesn't stop just because life is uncomfortable." That sentence stayed with him. When his phone finally turned on, a dozen missed notifications flooded the screen. Meetings, alerts, demands. The world calling him back. But for a strange reason, he didn't feel like answering any of it. Maya grabbed a toolkit.
"Come."
"Let's see your car." They walked back through the rain. She lifted the hood, inspected the engine like she'd done it 100 times before. "Fuel lines clogged," she said. "Probably dirt. Happens in storms." "You can fix it?" Adrian asked. She nodded. "If you're patient." He watched her hands work confidently, grease mixing with rain on her skin. Those hands didn't wear rings. They carried no privilege, but they carried strength. Within 20 minutes, the engine roared back to life. Adrian stared at her in disbelief. You just saved me." She wiped her hands on a cloth. "It's nothing." "No," he said quietly. "It's everything." She didn't ask for payment.
Didn't ask his last name.
Didn't ask who he was. She simply stepped back into the rain, returning to her unfinished bridge. As Adrian drove away, something inside him felt unsettled. For the first time in his life, someone had helped him without knowing his worth. And for the first time, he wondered who he really was without his money. Adrian couldn't stop thinking about her. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls of his penthouse office, painting the city below in gold. From this height, everything looked small, cars like toys, people like dots moving with purpose. This view had always made him feel powerful. Today, it felt empty. His assistant stood in front of him, reading out the schedule. Meetings with investors, a charity gala, a dinner with his mother, and the board members. Adrian nodded mechanically, but his mind wasn't there. It was stuck under a half-built flyover in the rain, with a woman who smelled of wet cement and honesty. "Maya," he whispered to himself. He didn't even know her last name. "Sir," his assistant paused. "Cancel the gala," Adrian said suddenly. The assistant blinked. "It's been planned for months." "I know." "Cancel it." When the office finally emptied, Adrian leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He had built an empire by controlling everything: people, time, outcomes. Yet one unexpected breakdown had shaken him more than any financial loss ever had. He wanted to see her again. Not as Adrian Cole, Billionaire CEO. Just as the man she had helped that night. By late afternoon, his car was back on the same road. This time, the sky was clear, the rain washed away, leaving the city raw and construction site was alive with noise, machines humming, workers shouting, steel clashing. He parked nearby and stepped out, dressed simply. No suit. No watch worth more than a worker's yearly salary. She was there. Maya stood near a concrete mixer, helmet on, giving instructions. Her voice carried authority without arrogance. When she turned and saw him, her expression shifted briefly, from surprise to recognition. "You," she said. "Car working fine?" He smiled. "Perfect. Thanks to you." She nodded and went back to her work as if seeing him again meant nothing special. That stung more than he expected. "I was hoping," he said, walking closer, "I could thank you properly. Maybe buy you some tea?" She looked at him for a long moment, measuring something invisible.
"Tea's fine," she said.
"But only if you don't slow me down." They sat on overturned crates near the edge of the site. The tea was cheap, overly sweet, and served in chipped cups. Adrian didn't care. It tasted more real than any luxury drink he'd ever had. "So," she said, blowing on her tea, What do you do, Adrian? He hesitated. This was the moment where names changed everything. I work in business, he said simply. She nodded. Figures. You talk like someone who's used to being listened to. He chuckled. Is that a bad thing?
Depends, she replied.
Some people forget how to listen. Her words weren't accusing,
Just honest.
they talked slowly. About work. About how she grew up watching her father build houses with his hands. About how she studied engineering at night while working during the day because quitting wasn't an option. People think construction work is for those who failed, she said quietly. But someone has to build the world. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. Not the mud on her boots or the tiredness in her eyes, but the dignity in the way she sat, the pride she carried without needing validation. And you, she asked, why were you driving alone so late? He thought of the truth, loneliness masked by meetings, a life crowded with people, yet empty of connection. I needed to feel normal, he said. She smiled gently. Careful. Normal has a habit of changing you. Days turned into weeks. Adrian kept finding excuses to pass by the site. Sometimes with tea. Sometimes just to watch her work. They talked more. Laughed occasionally. Shared silences that felt comfortable instead of awkward. But the world around them noticed. Workers whispered. Some laughed behind her back. You're getting friendly with rich-looking strangers now. One of them joked. And in Adrian's world, rumors started too. Why are you always late to meetings? His mother asked sharply during dinner. You're distracted. I'm fine, he replied.
She wasn't convinced.
You're hiding something. Meanwhile, Maya felt the weight of judgment grow heavier. One evening, as they walked near the site, a luxury car passed by. Someone leaned out and shouted, Trying to marry rich, huh? Maya stopped walking. Adrian turned, anger flashing in his eyes. That's unacceptable. She raised her hand, stopping him. Don't.
She took a breath.
This is my life. People think kindness has a price when money is involved. He saw pain in her eyes then. Old pain. Familiar pain. I don't see you that way, he said softly. I know, she replied, but the world will. That night, as Adrian drove home, his phone rang. It was his mother.
I've arranged a meeting, she said.
You're being considered for a political partnership. This requires a certain image. Adrian knew what she meant. Wealth married wealth. Power stayed clean. Maya stood on the other side of that line. And for the first time in his life, Adrian felt torn between the world that raised him and the woman who showed him what humanity looked like without privilege. He didn't know it yet, but a storm far greater than that rainy night was coming. Adrian had faced billion-dollar risks without flinching, but nothing had prepared him for the quiet fear of losing something real. The closer he grew to Maya, the heavier the truth pressed on his chest. Every laugh they shared, every conversation over tea at the edge of the construction site, carried a shadow he couldn't ignore anymore. She didn't know who he truly was, and the longer he stayed silent, the more it felt like betrayal. One evening, the sky burned orange as the sun dipped behind unfinished pillars of concrete. Maya sat on a stack of steel rods, her helmet beside her, exhaustion written across her face. You've been quiet today, she said. Adrian nodded, thinking. That's dangerous, she joked, then turned serious. What's wrong? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Fear held him back, not of rejection, but of disappointment. He didn't want to become another rich man who shattered her faith in honesty. Before he could speak, a black SUV pulled up near the site. Its polished surface reflected the dust and sweat around it like an insult. Two men stepped out in suits. One of them was Adrian's chief legal advisor. Maya frowned. Your friends? Adrian's stomach tightened. I didn't call them. The men walked toward them. Workers paused. The air changed. "Mr. Cole," the advisor said, lowering his voice. "We've been looking for you." Maya froze. "Cole," she repeated slowly. Adrian stood up. There was no running now. No hiding. "Yes," he said quietly. "That's my name." The second man looked around with clear discomfort. "Sir, this isn't a suitable place." "Enough," Adrian snapped. Maya's eyes moved from his face to the SUV, to the suits, to the sudden respect in their posture. "You're that Adrian Cole?" she asked. "The billionaire." The name that appeared on buildings, news headlines, charity boards. He nodded once. "I am." Silence crashed between them harder than thunder. "So," she said slowly, standing up, "this whole time, you let me think you were just some guy." "I never lied," he said, pain heavy in his voice. "I just didn't tell you everything."
Her jaw tightened.
"You let me open my life to you. My struggles. My values." "I listened because I cared," he said. "Not because of where I come from." She picked up her helmet and put it on, shielding herself. "Rich people always say that," she replied. "Until reality shows up." She walked away. That night, Maya didn't sleep. Memories surfaced. Men who smiled kindly until they saw her calloused hands. Employers who admired her strength, but never invited her to sit at their table. She felt foolish.
Exposed.
Adrian, meanwhile, sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights mocking him. For the first time, his wealth felt like a wall, not a shield. Days passed. Maya avoided him completely. If he showed up, she moved to another section. If he waited, the warmth between them had turned into distance filled with unspoken hurt. Then the accident happened. A metal beam slipped during a night shift. A shout rang out. Chaos followed. Maya was pushed aside just in time, but a young worker wasn't as lucky. He lay injured, bleeding, panic spreading across the site. Without thinking, Adrian ran forward. He tore off his jacket, pressed it against the wound, and stayed there until the ambulance arrived. Maya watched from a distance. She saw no billionaire that night. Only a man kneeling in mud, shaking with fear, refusing to let go. Later, as sirens faded, Adrian stood alone, hands still stained with blood and oil. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly behind him. "I wanted to," he replied, "because someone needed help. That's all." She studied him, really studied him, the way she had that first night in the rain. "You don't belong to my world," she said, "and I don't belong to yours." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe those worlds are just stories people tell to stay comfortable." Her eyes filled, though she didn't let the tears fall. "My father died on a construction site," she whispered. "Rich men promise safety, promised care, then disappeared." Adrian felt the weight of her words settle deep into his soul. "I can't change what others did," he said, "but I can choose who I am." She turned away, torn between fear and hope. Love was growing where it wasn't supposed to. And both of them knew society would not forgive it easily. The city was buzzing with news. Adrian Cole's name was everywhere again, on billboards, in financial columns, on television screens. A major infrastructure project had been approved under his company's leadership, the kind that reshaped skylines and made history. And the irony was cruel. The project site was the same area where Maya worked. She found out the hard way. The next morning, a group of executives arrived at the construction zone. Clean boots, sharp suits, clipboards held like weapons. Workers were ordered to line up. Inspections began. Maya stood among them, uneasy. Then she saw Adrian step out of a black car. This time, he wasn't hiding. His posture was different, controlled, powerful. The man the world knew. Their eyes met. Pain flickered across her face before she masked it with professionalism. Adrian felt it like a blow to the chest. "Good morning," one of the executives said loudly. "This project is now under direct oversight of Coal Industries." Whispers rippled through the workers. Maya lowered her gaze. Later that day, Adrian tried to speak to her privately. "This wasn't my decision alone," he said. "But I wanted the project done right."
Safely.
With dignity. She crossed her arms. "And now what? I'm supposed to trust that the billionaire cares about the workers?" "I care about you," he said. Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "That's the problem." The pressure came fast after that. Adrian's mother invited him to dinner. The house was elegant, cold, perfect. "You're becoming careless," she said, sipping her wine. "People are talking." "Let them," Adrian replied. "They're talking about a woman," she continued. "A construction worker. Do you know how that looks? She's intelligent."
Strong. Kind, he said.
"She is not your equal," his mother said sharply. "Not in this world." Adrian stood up. "Then maybe this world is broken." Meanwhile, Maya faced her own storm. Supervisors treated her differently. Some avoided her. Others watched her too closely. A rumor spread that she was getting special treatment. One afternoon, she was called into the office. "We think it's better if you transfer sites," the manager said. "Less distraction." She understood what he meant. That evening, she met Adrian near the site one last time.
"I'm leaving," she said.
His heart sank. "Because of me?" "Because I won't let anyone question my dignity," she replied. "I built my life with my hands. I won't let love turn into pity." "I never pitied you," he said. "I know," she whispered. "But the world does." Tears finally escaped her eyes. "Loving you feels like standing in front of a storm," she said. "And I'm tired of being strong all the time." Adrian stepped closer, voice breaking. "Let me stand with you." She shook her head. "You already stand above me, whether you want to or not." She walked away before he could stop her. Days passed in silence. Adrian tried to drown himself in work, but numbers meant nothing now. He replayed every conversation, every look, every moment. He chose fear over honesty. Then he made a decision that shocked everyone. At a press conference meant to celebrate the new project, Adrian stepped to the podium. He looked out at the crowd of reporters, investors, and executives. "This project is about more than concrete and steel," he said. "It's about people and the dignity of labor." Murmurs spread. "I will be personally working alongside the construction teams for the next month," he continued. "Not as an owner, as a worker." His mother watched in disbelief. Cameras flashed. The next morning, Maya arrived at her new site. And there he was, wearing a helmet, covered in dust, waiting. She stared at him, stunned. "You can't do this," she said. "I already am," he replied. "Not for headlines. For understanding." She searched his face, seeing exhaustion, resolve, and something deeper, love without entitlement. The wall between them cracked. But the final test still waited. Because society doesn't give up its rules easily, the first day Adrian worked on the site, the cameras stayed away. He had refused media coverage. No announcements. No speeches. Just him, a helmet too big for his head, gloves stiff from newness, and hands that had never carried real weight before. The work humbled him fast. Concrete burned his palms. Steel cut into his shoulders. The sun showed no mercy. By midday, his back ached in ways no office chair ever had. Yet he didn't complain.
He watched.
He listened. He learned. Maya kept her distance at first. She spoke only when necessary, gave instructions without warmth, protected herself behind professionalism. But she noticed everything. How he helped lift loads without being asked. how he waited his turn, how he shared water instead of retreating to comfort. One afternoon, a worker collapsed from heat exhaustion. Panic rippled through the site. Before supervisors reacted, Adrian was already kneeling beside the man, supporting his head, calling for shade and water. Maya rushed over. Their eyes met. In that moment, something softened. That night, after the workers left, they sat quietly on the edge of the site. The sky burned purple, the air heavy with dust and effort. "You didn't have to stay," she said. "I wanted to understand your world," he replied, "not to enter it as a savior, just as a man." She exhaled slowly. "Understanding doesn't erase difference." "No," he agreed, "but it creates respect." Days turned into weeks. Whispers changed tone. Workers stopped mocking. Some even defended him. "He works harder than most," one said. "She never asked for favors," another said about Maya. Slowly, the line between them blurred, not erased, but respected. Then came the final blow. Adrian's mother arrived unannounced. She stood at the site, heels sinking into dust, eyes sharp with disbelief.
"This ends now," she said.
"I'm pulling my support. The board will follow." Adrian didn't raise his voice. "Do what you must. You're choosing embarrassment over legacy," she snapped.
"No," he said.
"I'm choosing integrity." She turned to Maya. "Do you know what you're costing him?" Maya met her gaze, calm and unshaken. "I never asked for anything." Silence stretched. Then Adrian did something no one expected. He removed his helmet and addressed the workers, his mother, everyone. "This woman saved me when I was powerless," he said. "Not because of who I was, but because of who she is." He looked at Maya. "If loving her cost me titles, money, approval, then they were never worth having." Maya's breath caught. His mother's expression faltered. For the first time, uncertainty cracked her certainty. Weeks later, the board backed down. Public opinion shifted. People saw not scandal, but sincerity. Maya and Adrian stood together at the finished bridge months later. Cars passed over it smoothly, lives connected because of unseen labor. "I used to think love was about sacrifice," Maya said softly. "Now I think it's about standing equal." He smiled.
"You taught me that."
They didn't marry in a palace. They didn't chase approval. They built a life where dignity came first. Because true love doesn't rise above class. It walks beside it. Sometimes, life doesn't change us through success. Sometimes, it changes us through a breakdown on a dark road, in the rain, when pride has nowhere to hide. A billionaire learned that night that money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy character. A construction worker proved that dignity is not worn in suits, but carried in the way we treat strangers. This story isn't about wealth falling in love with poverty. It's about humanity recognizing itself. When we strip away titles, bank accounts, and social labels, what remains is simple: kindness, respect, and the courage to see another person as an equal. True love doesn't ask where you come from. It asks who you are when no one is watching. And maybe, just maybe, the world would be a better place if we learned to honor the hands that build it, and the hearts brave enough to love beyond class. Because the greatest bridges are not made of steel or concrete. They are built between souls.